Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone! Come on, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday, joined now by thehoosier.com's basketball head writer, Alec Lasley. And it's a busy time, man. It's a busy time as these names keep floating around. It's like a lottery right now with the ping pong balls just sitting there. There's, and then one gets sucked up into the tube like, all right, and so-and-so commits to Indiana. And it's just coming at you nonstop. But Indiana's slow to fill this out yet. And I know it's going to not be something that happens quickly. But a lot of us thought that this was the week things would start hitting. I'm not to say that it won't still happen this week, but if not, next week is going to have to start posting some guys, because not that it's late, but you're into the process now. And I think that I would have expected to see another name or possibly two that had committed by now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, but by no means is this the point where you start to get nervous and worried,
No.
right? But the level of stress, if you go through the end of this week and don't land, at least one player, right, heightens. And between Lamar Wilkerson, between Josiah Miles, who's going to be on campus later today and into tomorrow, Tate Connerway, right, those are the three core players that you guys are looking at right now from an Indiana perspective. You need to start landing these guys. And by the last 48 hours, right, probably haven't been the exact way that a lot of Indiana fans were hoping it would go, with obviously Tate Connerway leaving campus without at least officially making an announcement, and then Lamar Wilkerson trending much more towards Kentucky after those visits, after he canceled his Auburn visit, which was supposed to be scheduled for yesterday. So at this point, right, you kind of, I don't want to say pivot, but you definitely have to do some sort of a hard reset, right? You lose out on Josh Dix, you lose out on Ryan Conwell. Things aren't trending in the perfect direction for Lamar Wilkerson at the moment. Again, as of last night, still had not informed the coaching staffs of a full decision. But if that goes Kentucky's way, right, you're now looking at missing out on your three top guard targets, all three who were phenomenal shooters, phenomenal scorers. And you really have to now do a little bit of a hard reset to evaluate where you're going to land some of this top talent from. Because, yes, you still have some really good pieces in Tucker DeVries, obviously Connor Enright, and then another good piece in Reed Bailey. But you need more help around those guys, and you need shooters. And that's the one thing that Darian DeVries has emphasized and stressed, is he loves to have plenty of depth at the shooting position. And right now you don't have that. And that's what all of his teams, his successful teams, have been made up of, are multiple shooters at multiple different positions. And right now you're very, very much limited to Tucker DeVries. Reed Bailey has the ability to stretch the floor a little bit, but he's by no means a high volume knockdown shooter at that position. Connor Enright's shown the ability to do that in a Darian DeVries system, but Lamar Wilkerson was that guy who you could have, put anywhere on the floor and he would have hit a high volume of perimeter shots. So now you have to really take a hard reset. There are going to be other shooters out there, obviously. There are going to be other scorers, but you need to start landing some of these players so you know what the rest of this offseason is going to look like. And right now there are just obviously still a lot of questions of, what this team can be, what this team is going to look like, and more importantly, where these pieces are going to come from and fit in.
We've got to mention here that Five Lefts is referring to the IDS, the Indiana Daily Student, the student paper that says Petrovic. Who is Petrovic? Did I'm not missing out on a name?
That's Zerno's agent.
Oh, okay. So said that Zerno did not want to decommit, that they reached out to DeVries' staff 4 times with no response. Well, I mean, first of all, if the coach doesn't come to you and say that we want you, that's probably a pretty good indication. So
here's, so I was told, this was back the day after Darian DeVries was hired. I was told that they had a call set up. Now, if that call happened, who knows? I was told the call was set up at that point, right? Look, if you're committed to another coach, that new coach coming in, does not need to keep that commitment, especially in this day and age of the transfer portal. Aaron Zerno has now taken a couple different visits. I believe he went to Villanova. I believe he went to Miami. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of additional interest from that end of things. And it's interesting that this comes out now. But like I said, I was told that a call was set up. Who knows if that call happened? That was the day after he was hired. And then right after that, he decommitted. But it's clearly obvious that, he did not really fit into what Darian DeVries wanted as a system and wanted, for his first roster. For this to come out now, right? I mean, I don't know the whole point and rationale of it. But this should be a non-factor and non-talking point, because coaches don't have to keep prior commitments. And that's clearly what this seems to be in this scenario.
Yeah, it reminds me back in the day of Tom Crean, Grant Gillon, a player from Northern Indiana that should not have received a scholarship offer from Indiana. And then I think that Crean kind of pushed him out. And I don't understand why, but Gallon just took that to personally and made this big deal out of it. And stories came out, which I thought was stupid on his part personally. But just like I do with this, look, if the girl doesn't want you, she don't want you, man. Accept it and move on. But it is time for the DeVries staff to start making hay. I know that they're just now getting fully together, though. You just had Kenny Johnson named on the staff. Still no official announcement, and I wonder why about Drew Adams, who has been there the whole time with him everywhere he's been, why that has not been officially announced yet.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, they're all still working right now. So I think it's just more or less that they want to announce everyone all together. Obviously, they already officially announced Nick Norton, but I think that was pretty much known from the very beginning that he would be joining Darian DeVries. I think it's just making sure that all the kind of final details are settled for this staff. But as we know, Drew Adams and Kenny Johnson. I was told Kenny Johnson was already on campus on this week, Saturday. So he was there for the visits. So that you look at what they're doing. They're still working. They're still recruiting. They're obviously in the midst of getting a roster together. I don't think it truly is a huge deal that they haven't officially announced anything, because we all know what this staff is going to look like, at least up to a certain point, with Kenny Johnson, Drew Adams, Nick Norton, and a few others that have obviously been mentioned.
Kenny Johnson is a good add to this staff. He is a very good, well-known recruiter in college basketball, has familiarity with Indiana, having been on the staff prior with Tom Crean. He understands the state, understands the basketball connection. Not that he is necessarily going to be recruiting Indiana, but understands the everything that goes on with Indiana, and understands about being in that position he was with Crean, where they were at rock bottom. They haven't done much since then. So that would be weird to come back that many years later and to see it still at a position that it had been in essence. Actually, not what it was when he was here. During the time he was here, I think they won a Big Ten title at least. But hopefully that gets back to being the case. The recruitment side, all of these guys that we're seeing, the names, and I get it because we've seen so many of these players come out of mid-major schools and whatnot. But every single one that Indiana is currently looking at are guys that you never heard of, which I don't have an issue with that. I know that as a coach, you want to get the guys that you think fit your program, what you're trying to build. I don't get that or have an issue with that at all. As a matter of fact, the guy that was just on Josiah Miles, he's listed as like the 223rd ranked portal guy, but his stats are kind of off the chart. I mean, great shooter. He just has good numbers. So I don't understand, why is he ranked so low with the numbers that he has? It has to be the competition.
Yeah, I mean, again, the transfer portal rankings are always going to be hit or miss because you're going to get guys who, look to be able to, take the step up from like a mid-major to a high major, or even a non, Power 4 school to a Power 4 and go from a role player to a star. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, to base it off of rankings, right, we've gone down this path now almost every single year where guys are way overrated and guys are way underrated. So, no one's really going to know what, these players are going to look like and what this team is going to look like in terms of their capabilities and their, ability and what expectation should be until the season actually gets going. Definitely not, in the middle of April. But, for a kid like Miles, right, a guy who, shown some ability, he's still young, only played 2 seasons, both at obviously North Florida there, but a guy who, is looking to take that next step. I think it's more or less of a, unknown for him at this point. And I don't think from an Indiana perspective, you're looking at him to come in and be the star, right? But again, there are only 4 players on this roster as of today. You need a lot more than 4 to fill out a roster, and you need a lot more than 4 to be a very good team when it comes down to, making a deep run in whether it's a Big Ten tournament or whether it's an NCAA tournament. We saw, the depth that, the majority of the better teams in the Elite 8 or the Final 4 had. And that was going 8 or 9 deep, but 8 or 9 with very, very much consistent performances from those 8 or 9 guys, right? And so you need people to come in, play their roles, and know how to have breakout games. You saw that from Florida, multiple guys stepping up, right? Well, Richard, was kind of that 3rd or 4th scorer for Florida for most of the year, and kept them in the game in the national championship game, and ended up being really the catalyst for why Florida won that one. So it doesn't matter where these guys are ranked, because at the end of the day, no one knows how they're going to be able to translate skill-wise to the next level, and there's always going to be evaluations that miss. But if a coach likes him and a coach thinks he can fit that specific style, then you have to trust that, because again, Darian DeVries has known how to flip rosters and build rosters. This one just is obviously taking a little bit more time, and you're seeing a little bit more stress because, again, you missed out on Josh Dix, you missed out on potentially getting Ryan Conwell, and then obviously if Lamar Wilkerson does move over to Kentucky, then you kind of miss out on 3 really high priority targets, and that's what people are just going to remember.
And what about Troy guard Tayton Connerway? He's been a name that has really been bouncing around as well. No updates on him here of late.
Yeah, so just wrapped up his visit the other day to Indiana. Visited Vanderbilt right before that, Mississippi State as well. And it looks like it's probably going to be a commitment that should, or a decision that will wrap up this week. And it does look like it's going to come down to Indiana and Vanderbilt most likely. But no decision, has been made up to this point. But a guy that Indiana should feel comfortable in landing, a guy who fits perfectly with what Darian DeVries wants. Again, a playmaker who can get downhill, create space for other shooters. Isn't a very, very good shooter. Has been more streaky in his career up to this point. But a guy who, again, if you're trying to set a culture year one, a guy who plays extremely hard, very physical, very good defender. And if you pair him with, again, other shooters, which is what the vision is for this roster, it's a potential terrific addition if he does decide to go to Indiana here later this week, with the assumption that commitment will happen, whether it is Indiana, Vanderbilt, in some point over the next few days.
How could Indiana lose out to Vanderbilt if that were to happen? Unless he is an extremely smart individual who is thinking that his post basketball career is going to be in the business world somewhere. I would get that totally because of the school at Vanderbilt. Other than that, I'm like, why on God, man? Not only going to Indiana, it's an opportunity to go to a place which I don't think that they give a crap about this because they're not from the region, but to be a part of bringing Indiana back to where they should be. This has to happen now on this cycle with I don't mean now. I mean during the Darian DeVries era. This has to happen. They cannot have a third straight failed coaching hire. And I don't consider Tom Crean a failure because he had Indiana ranked number one. He went off the cliff at the end, but not a failure. He took him from ground zero to number one. So just keep that in your pipe. But the last two offers, man, they've got to, it's everything is set up too perfectly. NIL, the transfer portal, was made for Indiana to return to being to Indiana. And boy, there's still, it's such a slow, sluggy process. And you can't expect magic and lightning in a bottle. But man, it's hard to not look at people like Pat Kelsey, who came from the College of Charleston, had to fill his entire roster like Indiana is. He didn't even have a Trent Sisley coming in. He didn't have a Tucker DeVries coming with him. So he had to do all of that and then had a damn good season on top of it. There is some pressure for Darian DeVries to not match that. But I think that Indiana needs to be in the tournament next year. There's no excuse to not be able to put together a tournament-worthy team, and we'll see whether or not that happens. But I mentioned earlier about pressure being on him, and there should be some. There should always be pressure if you're at an elite school. Always. If it's not, then something's not right. But that's a natural, organic thing at a place like Indiana. It just happens because of the fan base, because of everything along with it. Whether or not it happens, I'm a little, we'll find out. I have no doubts. It's just, I'm just wondering why it is. It seems like this is a little slower. Not that I'm thinking there should be 4 or 5 guys kicking in, but man, you would think one a week at the minimum. But when you're just missing out on guys, is your basket? Do you have enough eggs in your basket?
Yeah, I mean, that can be asked, right? But I mean, if you look at, right, he's been on the job for almost a full month. And I know a lot of people, right, are going to look at the Tucker DeVries coming with him and say that really, that's a shoe-in almost. But you're looking at now at least three guys, right? Take Trent Sisley out of the equation. But, you have 3 guys that committed in a month. That's almost one a week. So theoretically, right, you're moving at that pace. But you need to continue to get those additions because you don't have 5 guys, 6 guys already on the roster where you only need to fill, 4 or 5 spots. The other thing, again, is, Indiana has a full roster to fill. So NIL cannot be all bunched up in 1 or 2 players. And that's something else that you have to think about. Obviously, if you overspend for someone, that's going to limit who you can have at 2, 3, 4 other spots. And that's one thing that I think Indiana is trying to play with a little bit because, again, not many teams have to rebuild an entire roster from top to bottom right away. You always have 5-6 spots, right? But you can always lean on 5-6 players who are returning. Elijah Freeman, Division II guy that visited Indiana before the dead period about a week and a half ago now, I guess. Took visits to Auburn, Tennessee. Those are the three schools pretty much heavily involved for him at this point. A decision's likely going to come again in the next week. Indiana had a lot of steam before the dead period, and obviously he's now taken 2 visits since. It doesn't appear that there's going to be any more visits from him. So you're looking at Indiana, Tennessee, Auburn probably for Elijah Freeman, a really athletic wing who kind of fits almost everything that all three of those programs really want to do, and that's get more athletic, longer on the perimeter. But you have to look at Auburn and Tennessee probably have the better pitch because they've been able to not only get, especially from an Auburn standpoint, they've been able to really produce a lot of very, very good college players who have come up from the JUCO ranks, who have come up from the Division II ranks. Bruce Pearl has had a phenomenal track record in that realm. And then obviously you see what Tennessee's been able to do with Dalton Connect and then Chaz Lanier the last 2 seasons. So, if you're looking at that from that perspective, right, why would you not want to join that potential development? So those are the 3 programs there for Elijah Freeman, though.
Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com on 3. Go to thehoosier.com on 3 and become a subscriber for the latest in information on recruiting, basketball, football, news for the Hoosiers, and much more. Alec Lasley, appreciate you, my friend.
Appreciate it, Jim. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today. Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.